It began in late summer 1945, a moment when the Pacific War was fading but not yet gone. The world waited for surrender, believing the worst was ending. Yet, on the far southern edge of Japan's Ryukyu chain, a unit of U.S. Marines stepped onto an island and never returned. Their mission was simple. Their fate was not. This disappearance would become one of the most unsettling military mysteries the United States ever buried. The men were from Recon Company D, 31 Marines led by Lieutenant Jack Henson. Their assignment was to set up a forward radar outpost on a small volcanic island then known as Ishikiri. The task sounded routine. Secure the land, build a station, hold position, wait for extraction. But routine missions can turn into nightmares when the ground beneath them is wrong. Something on that island waited, hidden, patient, on August 5th. Just weeks before Japan's formal surrender, all radio contact from Camp Henson stopped. The final message was broken by static, a mix of weather warnings and something about movement on the ridge. Then the line fell dead. No follow-up, no distress call, no signal at all. When the Navy sent reconnaissance flights over the island, the pilots saw nothing. No smoke, no equipment, no men. Only jungle that looked untouched. A week later, the largest typhoon in decades smashed through the Ryukyus, forcing the ocean onto the land. Walls of rain and wind tore at every island in its path. Ishikiri disappeared under violence no one could measure. When the storm cleared, the island was wiped from maps. Its name replaced by a grid code, as if someone wanted it hidden. The Marines were declared missing in action, and then, over time, forgotten. Families received stiff form letters and vague condolences. No answers. No truth, but buried stories eventually rise. In 2024, nearly 80 years after the mission vanished, a research drone scanning vegetation on the island picked up a shape beneath the canopy. It wasn't natural. It was metal. Sharp lines, hard angles, the kind only humans create. The jungle should have erased it, yet it remained. That discovery forced a sealed file from the Truman era back into daylight. The question no one wanted to face returned. What happened to the men of Camp Henson? From above, Ishikiri looks like nothing more than a dark green smear in a bright blue sea. But under that thick cover lies history twisted into something unnatural. The island is small, only 7 miles across, but its interior is nearly impossible to enter. Vegetation grows in layers. Banyan roots hang like ropes. Ferns rise above a man's head. Vines wrap around anything that tries to move forward. Nature protects something inside. Locals call the place Kaminarishima, the Island of Thunder. They say storms form there even on clear days, that rain falls when the sky is empty. Fishermen avoid it. Those few who dare to land speak of strange lights drifting through the trees at night, lights that move against the wind. The island became a story whispered between sailors, something to avoid. Something not fully alive but not empty either. After the war, Japanese surveyors refused to map the area. Reports mentioned magnetic trouble, bizarre audio interference, and a single line later blacked out from official copies. Voices near the southern ridge. The island took on the shape of a ghost, a secret wrapped in vines and storms. Then the drone images surfaced. At first they seemed like wreckage left from conflict. But frame by frame, the shape sharpened. Trench outlines, square foundations, a curved arc that matched the frame of a Marine Quonset hut used in the 1940s. The island had remembered everything, even if the world had tried to forget. Beneath decades of moss and silence, something man-made waited. And for the first time in generations, Ishikiri began to wake. In early July 1945, the war was collapsing toward its end, though no soldier on the ground knew how soon the fighting would stop. The U.S. Pacific Command approved a classified plan known as Operation Silent Shore. It was designed as a final precaution if an invasion of Japan became necessary. The objective sounded clear. Send a small reconnaissance team to a remote island south of Okinawa, build a radar post and fuel point, maintain radio silence. Wait for orders. Lieutenant Jack Henson, only 31, was already hardened by battles at Tarawa and Peleliu. He was steady, calm, and respected. His team included 30 Marines, 3 engineers, and 1 Navy radio operator. All were chosen for toughness and secrecy. The island had nothing. No harbor, no roads, no people. Only cliffs, jungle, and the constant cry of cicadas. Supplies arrived by seaplane every 10 days when weather allowed. The unit built their base on the northern shore, cutting through the canopy and raising Quonset huts, radio towers, and fuel drums marked with dull green paint. They named the site Camp Henson. For a short time, everything followed the plan. Patrols recorded nothing unusual except for strange blips on radar that appeared and vanished without reason. The radio operator blamed interference. Others disagreed. Some men swore they saw lights on the hills at night. Lights that didn't belong there. Monsoon season arrived early. Rations spoiled. Communications to Okinawa weakened. Each message was warped by static as if something in the air resisted the signal. On the night of August 4th, at 20:13 hours, the final transmission reached Pacific Command. Camp secure, storm closing in. Then a burst of static. Then nothing. The Navy filed the message as routine weather disruption. That decision erased the last recorded moment of the men alive. The typhoon that struck the Ryukyus. That night was one of the most violent storms ever measured. Winds above 180 miles per hour tore trees from the soil and bent steel. The sea rose high enough to erase shorelines. Radar posts across Okinawa shut down one after another. The storm cut through the region like a blade. When the skies cleared 3 days later, the islands looked scraped. Navy search teams found scattered debris, fuel drums, metal panels, a lifeboat without numbers, but Ishikari could not be reached. Coral and storm surge blocked every attempt to land. Weeks passed before anyone reached the island. The team that landed expected ruins. They found nothing. No huts, no equipment. No bodies, no footprints. The jungle looked too untouched. Even the sand looked wrong, as if the ground had shifted. Compasses spun without direction. Radios cut out. One searcher claimed he heard metal hitting metal deep inside the trees. No one else heard it. After a week, the Navy ended the mission. The case was labeled unrecoverable. The families received medals in silence. Ishikari was removed from active charts. The ocean covered its coordinates. The world moved forward. The island did not. It kept everything buried, waiting for someone to return and hear what it had swallowed. For decades, the story of Camp Henson survived only as a forgotten legend, a whisper shared by historians and grieving families. There were no official reports, no confirmed casualties, no graves. Just 31 names etched into a memorial wall at Quantico and a few blurry photographs of men laughing under the Pacific sun. The mission, it seemed, had been wiped entirely from history. In 1972, a retired naval archivist named Robert Lane stumbled across a file marked Silent Shore, restricted, command eyes only. Inside were fragmented messages, requisition orders for experimental radar parts, and a handwritten note stamped denied existence. It quickly became clear the operation had been buried so deeply, even the Navy denied it ever existed. Lane went public in 1974, but his findings were immediately seized under the National Security Act. He died the following year in what was officially called a car accident on a dark, isolated road. Meanwhile, the families of the missing were left in confusion, trapped in contradictions. One widow received a letter claiming her husband had died heroically at sea. Another was told he was missing in combat somewhere in Okinawa Prefecture. Some were informed their loved ones were unrecoverable, others labeled non-operational casualties. No two documents matched. The bureaucratic fog thickened with each inquiry. By the 1980s, most families had stopped asking questions. The war had ended, the heroes were gone, and the files remained sealed. But beneath the paper trail, something felt off. In one memo, a commander had scrawled in the margin, "Recommend full suppression, site compromised, unnatural interference." Another referenced post-event anomalies and magnetic corruption. It was as if someone was trying to describe something they could not understand. For 50 years, Ishikari remained forbidden, absent from maps, protected by invisible red tape. The world forgot Camp Henson. but the jungle did not. And soon it would speak. 8 decades later, the story should have ended. But the past doesn't always stay buried. It waits. In 2024, a team of Japanese ecologists from Kyoto University began surveying remote islands in the Ryukyu chain, part of a post-typhoon reforestation study. One island, listed only as Sector 9B, was a speck of green almost erased from public satellite maps. The researchers flew drones over the thick canopy, expecting to record tree density and soil moisture. Instead, the sensors picked up strange thermal signatures, sharp, angular shapes far too uniform to be natural. When they overlaid the images, the heat signatures formed a line 6 rectangles perfectly spaced beneath the roots of banyan trees and volcanic soil. Man-made, one technician whispered. The data was sent back to Kyoto for analysis, and that's when the anomalies multiplied. Collins turned to the final pages. The ink was smudged by water or sweat. The handwriting was frantic, letters sprawling beyond the lines. The jungle isn't empty. We see lights at night. Voices not ours. Men disappearing. No signs of struggle, just gone. If we disappear, it won't be the storm that takes us. The bunker fell silent. Even the cicadas outside seemed to pause. Collins closed the journal slowly, leaving a faint print on the cover. Whatever had happened to Camp Henson's men, they had felt it coming. And whatever they saw before that final typhoon wasn't just nature, it was something watching them back on the mainland. News of the journal sent shockwaves through both governments. The U.S. released a limited statement acknowledging a discovery of historical interest. But behind the scenes, classified files were quietly reopened. In Tokyo, Kenji gained access to post-war archives that had been sealed under military order. Among faded documents and handwritten reports, he found a file marked Imperial Intelligence Detachment, Ishikari Outpost, August 1945. The Japanese had a secret presence on the same island, entirely unknown to the Americans. The file described an observation unit of 8 men sent to track unidentified Allied activity south of Okinawa. Their final report ended abruptly. Radio interference increasing, possible detection by foreign unit awaiting extraction. None were ever seen again. Local oral histories added another layer. Fishermen from the nearby Amami coast told stories of a battle that never happened. A brief firefight deep in the jungle, leaving no bodies, no shell casings, no survivors. They called it the Night of the Whispers. Villagers described the jungle screaming that night, gunfire, lightning, and then silence so complete it felt unnatural. After the war, Japanese officials quietly struck Ishikari from territorial maps, labeling it geologically unstable. In reality, they wanted the island forgotten. Takahashi overlaid Japanese coordinates with the Marines' camp layout. The positions matched almost perfectly. 2 forces, both stranded, both unaware of each other's full strength, meeting in a storm so violent it erased their footprints in an instant. Yet something still didn't add up. The remains uncovered in the bunker were too few, too orderly, Collins said softly. If there was a battle here, where are the others? The question hung in the humid air, unanswered as thunder rolled in the distance. The island seemed to listen. 3 days after the journal's discovery, the excavation expanded outward from the bunker. The ground seemed reluctant to give up its secrets. Roots wrapped around rusted helmets. Banyan tendrils clutched fragments of steel. When the first bone surfaced, no one spoke. It was a femur, pale and bleached, tangled in a strip of rotted canvas. The team expected American remains. What they didn't expect were the insignia that followed a corroded Japanese badge fuse to the same ribcage. More bones emerged, layered like a collapsed tableau. 2 bodies intertwined. One in remnants of a U.S. uniform. The other in Japanese field gear, not side by side, but together, as if they had fallen locked in combat or clinging to each other in desperation. As the days passed, the number of remains grew. Forensic specialists cataloged them meticulously. 37 partial skeletons in total. Some unmistakably American, others Japanese, and a few impossible to identify. The strangest part wasn't the mix of uniforms, but the timeline. Carbon dating revealed some bones had been buried decades after 1945, a few as late as the early 1950s. That's not possible, Collins said, staring at the datasheet. There were no retrieval missions, no known survivors, yet the evidence was irrefutable. Someone had lived here long after the war, patching uniforms, burying the dead, maybe even defending the site from something no one had recorded. A rusted M1 rifle was found, barrel bent as if struck by tremendous force. A Japanese canteen sat beside it, refilled recently enough for faint mineral residue to remain. It was as though fragments of two armies had merged into one soldier's cut off from the world, surviving together or dying together in silence. Takahashi stood over the pit as the sun set behind the canopy, voice quiet. Maybe they stopped fighting the war, he said. Maybe the island made them fight something else. No one answered. The wind moved through the trees with a sound almost like breathing. During the 7th week, near what had been the camp's command tent, they found the radio. Its frame was half melted, dials fused in place, but the serial number matched U.S. Marine field stations from 1945. Inside the corroded shell, a fragment of the transmission coil still clung to life, preserved beneath layers of clay. Collins insisted it be sent to a lab in Yokosuka for restoration. Weeks later, a digital reconstruction of the magnetic tape revealed something extraordinary. A sound file, less than 30 seconds long. It began with static, thick electric alive. Then a voice, calm but strained, filtered through decades of silence. "This isn't enemy fire," it said. The static swelled, cutting across the words like surf against rocks. Then again, faintly clearer, "It's something else." The bunker. The remains, the journal, the radio, they all pointed to one terrifying truth. Camp Henson had never simply vanished. It had been buried, preserved, observed, and perhaps haunted by forces beyond comprehension. Every artifact, every fragment of evidence suggested the men hadn't just disappeared into a storm. Something had been waiting, patient and unseen, marking time until someone returned to bear witness. Tell them. The jungle seemed to move as the final 3 words echoed through the room, sending chills down spines. Experts replayed the recording over and over, debating its meaning. Was it a metaphor, a warning of landslides, or perhaps collapsing terrain? Or was it a hallucination, the result of isolation? Had Henson and his men witnessed something beyond explanation? Environmental scientists offered theories. The island's magnetized volcanic core could cause disorientation, visual illusions, even infrasound hallucinations. Others whispered about biochemical exposure, recalling the classified memos hinting at experimental interference devices. But to Takahashi, the message was older, almost timeless. He remembered an Okinawan legend of Kamari, no Mori, the thunder forest, where trees shift after storms to hide the spirits of the dead. Maybe, he said softly, the island wasn't trying to kill them. Maybe it was keeping them. Collins said nothing. She simply played the tape again. The voice of a man long gone, whispering through decades of static, warning from the edge of history. Outside, the jungle swayed, almost as if listening. By the time the last fragments of evidence reached Washington, the truth had already been sanitized. Officially, Camp Henson was called a classified wartime anomaly, its findings inconclusive. But Collins wasn't convinced. In the National Archives basement, she uncovered a restricted series of files cross-referenced under naval signal interference. 1945-46. Inside were requisition orders for prototype electromagnetic dispersal units, signed by higher-ranking officers attached to the division that deployed Lieutenant Henson's team. Alongside them were chemical inventories labeled Beocom Echo, a code name for an experimental agent designed to scramble enemy radar by releasing ionized particles into the atmosphere. The compounds were volatile, untested, rumored to cause hallucinations, skin corrosion, and acute psychological disorientation. Collins realized the Marines hadn't been sent to set up a radar post. They had been instruments in a Navy experiment no one wanted to acknowledge. Another memo, dated October 1945, weeks after the typhoon, confirmed her fears. Silent shore operations terminated. Oil recovery assets denied clearance. Environmental contamination probable. That single line said everything. The Marines had been abandoned. Their bodies left uncollected, not because they were unreachable, but because they were radioactive in the most literal sense. Takahashi's findings in Tokyo mirrored hers. Japanese intercepts had detected anomalous radio emissions from Ishikiri before all signals went dark. The phrase metallic fog appeared repeatedly, as if both sides had witnessed the same impossible phenomenon. When Collins presented her report to the Department of Defense, it was quietly dismissed. The files were reclassified under containment, long-term environmental risk. She understood what that meant. Whatever had happened on Ishikiri wasn't just a wartime tragedy, it was an experiment gone wrong. A secret buried not from shame, but from fear of what might still linger beneath the soil. 2 years later, Ishikiri Island was opened briefly for a joint memorial between Japan and the United States. A small ship carried families of the missing Marines across the same waters their loved ones had once patrolled. Among them was Margaret Henson, granddaughter of Lieutenant Jack Henson, carrying the leather-bound journal recovered from the bunker. The air was thick with salt and memory. As they stepped onto the island, the cicadas droned like distant engines. The government had cleared a path through the overgrowth to the excavation site, now fenced off and lined with flags from both nations. Collins and Takahashi stood side by side, watching as families placed flowers in the earth. For a moment, time folded. Descendants stood where their ancestors vanished. Artifacts recovered from Camp Henson helmets, ration tins, even a rusted harmonica were divided between museums in Washington and Tokyo, each display titled "Echoes of the Forgotten Dot," yet among the remains cataloged from the site. 3 DNA profiles didn't match any of the 31 Marines or Japanese soldiers listed as missing. The lab report simply read, "Unknown male, estimated age 40 to 50, date of death indeterminate." Collins didn't share this with the families. The thought that some of Henson's men might have survived only to die alone on the island years later was unbearable. As the ceremony ended, she handed Margaret the restored journal. "Your grandfather's words," she said softly. "They belong with his family now?" Margaret nodded, eyes drifting toward the jungle where the wind moved the trees in slow, synchronized waves like something breathing beneath the earth. She whispered, "He said, the jungle moves." Collins looked out across the green expanse and shivered. No one replied. The memorial bells rang, echoing through the valley, fading into the same silence that had swallowed Camp Henson 80 years before. For nearly 80 years, Ishikiri Island slept. The jungle grew thick and wild, vines weaving over rusted steel, roots splitting walls of forgotten bunkers. Storm after storm swept across its cliffs, erasing footprints, swallowing what remained of Camp Henson until even memory itself began to fade. Then one drone flight changed everything. Footage, grainy at first, then crystal clear, showed the canopy parting just enough to reveal the geometry of man-made order beneath the chaos. A line of buried huts, a collapsed tower, the faint curve of a landing strip, now consumed by green. The discovery pulled a forgotten story from the soil and forced the world to look again. What began as an ecological survey became an excavation of ghosts, a slow unearthing of truth and consequence. The faces of the men who vanished returned through photographs, their smiles frozen in sepia tones, names now etched into memorials on both sides of the Pacific. Drone images faded into black and white war photos. Marines building, laughing, unaware they were stepping into legend. The same ground where they had stood was now a sea of ferns, each leaf catching the light like a whisper from the past. Collins' voice echoed in narration. Calm but heavy with everything learned and everything still unknown. History doesn't disappear. It waits, buried under sand, sealed in silence, hidden in the roots of the world. She looked out over the island one last time as the wind rose, bending the trees in slow, rhythmic waves, the same motion described in Henson's final message. "War doesn't just claim lives," she said. "It buries stories. Some wait 80 years to be found." The story was intense, but the story on the right-hand side is even more insane.